So this was done. Then we'll move on to securing the IIS. And before we go there, let's look at managing the certificates as well. Now, what happened? Sorry. So what happened in certification authority? Again, you have different types of certificates that you can issue and different ways that you can manage the certificate. So here, if I take a view, you have a root CA, and then you have a subordinate CA or a sub CA. And I can be a requester for a certificate for, let's say, a digital signatures, or a system can be a requester for a client authentication or for a device authentication. Like, for instance, in case of a wireless, when you go to a corporate network with your laptop, it automatically connects. It doesn't ask you for your username or the password. It automatically connects to the wireless network. So that's based on the certificate authentication. So you can have a system acting there, or a website or an app for a certificate. Now, what happened in a typical world? For example, if I look at a digital certificate, if I have to take, I can go for a 1300 to 1500 of a range, and I can get a digital signatures for me, which I can use the for uploading, let's say my income tax documents, where I can digitally sign my return and upload it on the website, on the government website. Similarly, I can use it for signing my email communications. If I am within the corporate network, I can utilize that. Likewise, there can be multiple usage and use cases for the certificate, and Tata has one for the certification authority. So all these CAs are being managed by the certification authorities, and in real life, you have to be physically there. You have to prove your identity, and somebody would approve your certificate request for you to obtain that certificate. And obviously, you have to submit the documentation as well. So that's how in a real world the certificates work. Now, in a Windows environment, so this is my Active Directory. I can go to a server manager. I can add a role. And when I add a role, I see Active Directory services on the top, which means that this is one of the feature available for me to install. So what I'll do, I'll select this, and I can have multiple options under it. So some of the option is like a certificate authority that I can have. Then I can have a enrollment web service that I can use. So certification authority is the primary server or the service which is required in order for a CA server to operate. The certification authority policy web service and the certificate enrollment policy web service is required for a situation where you do not want only Windows joined servers or a domain joined servers, but rather you also want a non-domain joined computers to interact with this server and the server certificate or the. Then you have certification authority web enrollment, which is required for the. So let's say if I want to install or request a certificate for IIS or for a web server or an app, so I can browse the CA request form over a browser, and I can get that request done. So I can use that certification authority web enrollment service. Then I have a network device enrollment service wherein the CA provides the capability to issue certificates, let's say to network devices in terms of routers, firewalls, or load balancers. So those kind of devices, if they need a certificate, then I need a network device enrollment service. Then I have a online responder as well. Now, in online, so online responder is like, if you remember the GPG concept, we had the key server, which maintains the revocation list or the active keys as well. So this particular online responder maintains a CRL, which is a certificate revocation list for each of the certificate, and it validates whether that certificate is valid or not. So that's what the purpose of online responder is. And this is normally used in a very large environment where you have lots of systems and computers interacting with the CA. So you want to reduce that load and distribute that load. That's where you add an online responder role to your Windows server as well. So once you select what you need, click next. Here you will have an option to choose additional features based on the main feature that you have chosen. So say next again. I don't have it because I have already installed these two as well. And I say next, next, and install. So once this installation is completed, you need to configure it as well. So it is done. Then you go into this flag and say configure. So you are presented with the specific role configuration window. So provide the credentials of your domain controller. This is what you want to configure. And that's it. So now your system, your ADCS is configured on this machine. Now, what I can do is I can go to a certification authority. And this is the panel where I will see how many certificates have been issued, revoked, pending requests, failed requests, all of that, and the certificate templates as well. Now, these templates provides me a measure or an opportunity to look at the different purposes of each template, and I can configure and manage those templates. I can delete, I can make those available and stuff. So, for example, if you look at these templates, barring the first one, if you start from here, this is for email replication, this is for smart card logon or a domain controller authentication, Kerberos authentication, file recovery, and stuff. Now, let's say I want to create another one. So I'll go to manage. These are the templates which are already available, not necessarily published for the use, but these are the templates which are available. Let's say I want to use a computer template for a system authentication, and I say duplicate it. Now here I can configure this template. I can set the encryption parameters. I can set the purpose, what it is used for. I can set who can enroll into it and who cannot. So all of that I can configure. So let's say I want to say batch 08 uh, computer certificate. So this is the name of the certificate that I'm putting. What is a validity period? What is a renewal period? I will tell that. Publish the certificate in Active Directory. Yes. Then I'll come to the signature and heading. So what is the purpose? So for example, encryption. Okay, so include symmetric algorithm for the subject, apply. Then cryptography. So you can choose what all providers you want to choose for a cryptography provider. Key attestation, issuance requirements. Where is the security? So I want to get this enrolled by everybody who is authenticated user in domain. So authenticated user can enroll. This is my local admin. So the person can read and write, and I want him to have an enroll option as well. And domain admin, domain computers, and enterprise admins can also make use of it. So I've configured my template, and I'll close. So this is a new template which is available now, which is batch 08 computer certificate. I'll close the screen, and here I'll say new certificate template to issue, and I'll select batch 08 certificate. So now you see a batch 08 certificate is available for the issuance. Now what I'll do, I'll go to my another computer where I want this certificate to be installed, and I'll run MMC. I'll open a certificate snap-in with the computer account. So here it is. Okay, I have the certificates. Now what I'll do is I'll say request new certificate. Since my system is already part of the domain, I am getting the Active Directory enrollment policy. Now, uh, if I have to get my certificates issued for a non-domain membered system, I can still do that through a web interface. So I'll tell you how to do that as well. Next, so this is what my policy that I have used is available. What is the capability of it? Provides a digital signature, key encipherment, server authentication, and client authentication. Validity period is 365 days. And I'll say enroll, succeeded, finish, and now I have this batch 08. This is batch 08 computer certificate. So I have got this certificate installed for a server authentication. Now, if I look at this certificate, it is valid and it provides the coverage between this time to this time. So that is available to me. What is my key strength? I can look at algorithm, the hash algorithm, and I can look at my key strength here, which is 2048 bits. Now, if I go to the server property again and I say issued certificates, so I have got these many certificates issued. This is the batch 08 certificate, which I have just enrolled. So that's a certificate which has been issued. So I can keep a track of the different certificates that has been issued, and I can revoke the certificate from here as well. This is similar to what we did in a GPG. It's slightly different here in terms of we have a centralized CA server and we are managing and revoking the certificates from a CA server. Okay. Now we'll come to the IIS. So this is my IIS manager, which is a web server that we have. Now, what happened is, or before, yeah. So what happened is, in IIS, you have a lot of places that you can configure the security of the web server. And this is something which you will use largely in the web hosting environment, where you will have an opportunity to configure the authentication, the directory browsing, and stuff like that. So, for example, if you expand this tree, you have different sites. So, you have a default website and you have a server wide property. So, you can configure security at a server, at a site wide, or at a server wide as well. So, for example, at a server wide, the first thing that you will look at is a directory browsing, whether that is allowed or not allowed. So, for example, you will open the feature. You have time, size, extension date, long date. So you have this directory browsing right now, which is enabled onto it. Then you have, for example, authentication. So you have Active Directory client certificate enabled. Anonymous authentication is needed by every website to browse the pages. If you disable this, all the websites that you put onto IIS would need a username and the password to access. Basic authentication is like a pop-up box that you see. Similar to Windows authentication, it will be a Active Directory based Windows authentication that you can use with your websites. So based on the different audit purposes, when you are doing the audit, you will validate these features, what all these features are enabled, and why those features are needed on that particular server or not. Similarly, you will have error pages. Now, the purpose of error pages or defining error pages is, if I don't have an error page, let's say I access a page www.google.com/abcd.html. It is not existing. So I will get a error 404 that this page is not available. If I am programmatically looking at this directory browsing or the page guessing, I would get to know that if I get 404 as a status code, that page would not be available and I can skip that particular page from my list of pages to be scanned. If I get 200 even on the page which is not existing, then my program will be confused, because every request that my program will send will generate a 200 status code, which means okay, and it will make an attempt to scan or test that page using, let's say, Nessus or Web Inspect or any other tool. So that way I will be able to delay the scan progress, and I will be able to identify the network traffic and protect my servers or my website from those attacks. So that is why error pages are important in the environment to be configured as a specific available page. So I can, so for example, if you browse amazon.com and if there is a connection error, you still see an Amazon Outlook with a dog sitting there, which means it's a valid page. It's just that it is not relevant to us. So that is how you will configure the error pages to display a certain message rather than saying the page not available. Then you also have a HTTP redirect and IPN domain restriction. So here you can have an allow or a deny entry to allow specific IP address to access this particular website or this particular server. So you can specify that IP address or the entire range. Similarly, you can deny a specific IP address or the entire range from accessing the website. it does not protect you against DDoS. So don't believe that this will enable you from a DDoS attack. It's just that the processing doesn't allow you to access a page. The request still gets processed, and from a DDoS or from a DOS standpoint, that is what is needed. So it does not protect you against a DDoS attack. Then you also have the logging enabled, so you can specify which logs to be or what kind of logs to be stored, and whether you want to store it in a log file, whether you want to log it to the event viewer. You can schedule that, and you can also schedule the log rollover, which means if a log size is more than X, then rotate the log, or if the log is older than this, then rotate the log. And those policies from a logging standpoint as well. Then you have a request filtering, wherein based on the extensions, based on uh, the what do you say, the verbs, which is put, get, trace, track, options. Based on those verbs as well, you can filter the request for this website or this for web page. So for example, you can create a rule to say scan the URL, and if you find any specific query in the URL or any text which you don't want or which you want to block, so if you find a text, then block. So for example, scan URL and scan the query string, and let's say I want to give it like a name, a test filter here. Now deny strings, I will say this is a deny string. I will say this is a deny string, and I say okay. So if in my URL or the query, if I see a deny string as this, then the request will automatically be dropped or rejected for that request or for that client. Similarly, on the URL, I can allow a URL or I can have a deny sequence to directly access from outside the web page. So I can have these deny sequences. I can put a control on the HTTP verbs where I can say deny verbs as options, where I say deny verb as trace, and let's say get as well. So I have denied these three verbs on the website at a server level. So even if my website permits, my server would reject these verbs. Similarly, on the header, you can have on the query strings, you can have these filterings, which will allow you to control the safety and the security of your application or the website. So that's under a request filtering. Similarly, if you look at a default website, you will have kind of similar stuff here. So this is something that you can do at a server wide. This is something that you do at a site wide. Now in a directory browsing, you can, for example, so for example, if I enable this, I will have time, size, extension, date, etc. available. And my website URL is, this is 14. So if I browse to 14, this is what 14 only or what? So I have a directory browsing. Let's enable it here as well. Okay, deny the HTTP verb. The request filtering module. Deny. I think get. So if I browse this page looks or comes. Why? Because this page is available. If I don't have this page available, my directory content would come as well. So for example, if I say add a virtual directory and physical path is C drive alias, okay, pass through authentication, application, let's say desktop. Okay, so okay, the config file is not there. Anyway, so if I browse to this website, I should be able to get my directory browsed here. Which I have used IIS in 2007. Now the things have changed. Give me a time. Yeah. So this is how the directory browsing would look like, where you will be able to see the content of the directory. And when you click on a specific file, it'll basically open it up, or you will be able to download it on your machine. Now this is a directory. You will be able to browse the directory as well, and if there is any sensitive information, you will be able to download that sensitive information too. Now in order to disable this, you basically disable the directory browsing, and now if you browse to it, it should say forbidden, because the web server is configured to not to list the contents of this directory. So that's how you will prevent the directory browsing on your servers, on the IIS servers as well, so that you don't get to a breach where your information is publicly available and everybody can browse to it. Clear?
So I have a doubt.
Yeah.
So when we set up that, they deny extensions on the server level, so that would also, I mean, these sites that are there, so even those sites would inherit that property,
Yes.
deny.
Yes.
So if I have 10 different sites and I set a deny rule at the server level, then all of those 10 sites would have that deny.
Correct.
But what if one of the site needs, an exception? So
You can explicitly go and configure it
at the site level.
at the site level. Yes.
Okay. And regarding the certificates that we were telling earlier, so what if
Hmm.
we have to install that certificate on 100 client missions? Uh, how would that
100
be?
client machines means the each of the system.
Yeah, each of the system.
Yeah, so certificate would be individual to each system because of the identity. So you will have to do it manually for each system. And that is where when the administrator or the IT help desk guy prepares the system, they usually do it at that time.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, sir. That's it.
All right. So let's move back here. This was done. Yeah, so we have different certificates: user, computer, SSL, single name certificate, subject alternative name certificate, wildcard certificate. And depending upon the each certificate use, you are normally charged by the CAs or the certification authorities. So user certificate is for a user identity. Computer certificate is issued to the system or a machine for, again, a system identity that it belongs to an enterprise, and that's where the authentication happen. SSL certificate is for the traffic encryption. Single name certificate is a DNS certificate which is given to, let's say, www.reva.edu.in. So that's a name which you have enrolled for the certificate, and you will not be able to use www.reva.edu.in because the name differs then. If you need more names, then you go for a subject alternative name certificate. And if you need a wide variety of the domain or the host to be covered, then you go with the wildcard certificates. The wildcard certificates are the most expensive one because of the unlimited number of hosts that you can add up to, or where you can install the certificate. So that's where the wildcard certificates are the most expensive one. Usually you will see a single name certificate on the websites. or at max a subject alternative name certificate. So these are the two which are largely used. Then this is how you basically configure the services. You have a certification authority role, you have authority web enrollment role, you have web service and a policy web service role, you have network device enrollment service role, and the online responder role. So these are the 6 roles which are available that you can configure as a CA server. And this is how you will be able to create a new certificate template and publish it. If you want to access through a web browser, you can do that as well. So let's say I have an IE here. I'll put my CA server, which is 13, and certification request, self-signed certificate. So I'll log in. And this is where I can download a CA certificate for my trust, where I can import it into my trust, and my system will then start to trust this CA as well. I can request a certificate. So user certificate or advanced certificate request, and I'll say submit. It will generate the request, and once I have it, I will install the certificate, and the certificate is installed in my store automatically. If I look into here, this is a user certificate which was generated and has been installed. Okay, so I can request a certificate using the website, or I can do it with the certificate snap-in for the computers. Okay, that's it. And then the exam, which will not happen today, but something for you to practice, and specifically on the Active Directory and the certificate management as well.
Sir, can you give the practice questions like for the lab which we have to practice?
Hmm. So should I post it in the chat?
Yes, sir, that would be fine.
Where is the chat? Can somebody ping hi? I don't see, unfortunately, the chat option.
Yes, sir. I'll just ping.
Yeah. No worries, I'll put it in a WhatsApp. I think some problem with my Teams today, so I've joined it over the web. But let me put in the Teams. Sorry, WhatsApp.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Sir, and can you walk through the like exam pattern, like how it will be, like it will be completely theoretical or multiple choice, or it's situation based scenarios?
So see, it'll be a combination of MCQ and the practical. MCQ is something which will be logical and something that you have already read in the slides or in the discussions that we have discussed. So the exam would not come outside of what we have talked in these 3 or 4 sessions. So MCQs would be very, very straightforward. some would be tricky. So my suggestion is read the question very clearly, because I may use a twisted language in the MCQ. So use that language very carefully. And when it comes to practicals would all be included. So let's say from a Linux standpoint, if I talk about questions from a remote logging, questions from encryption or a disk encryption, questions from a remote mounting, from Active Directory perspective, questions from BitLocker, question from an Active Directory policy, question from a certificate template. So these are the questions that you can expect.
Sir, is it an open book quiz or would it be?
Sorry?
Is it an open book exam? Or
Open book, yes.
Okay, so
hi, Paris. Just come again on the exam pattern, because I just joined this call. Sorry.
No, so they're asking, is it an open book or not?
Yeah,
so I'm
yeah.
saying it's an open book.
Open book. The exam pattern. I think there is a quiz and
The practical.
Quiz and practical. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
And will there be any lab within the question? Sorry, in that exam?
Yes, so practicals would be there. So for which you would need a Linux and a Windows server environment as well, which will be provided to you, but you will have to execute those questions and you will have to prepare a report in your preferred format. But like I said in the last session, the report should be self-sufficient enough for me to understand what you are trying to attempt or trying to do in those questions. So till the time you are making sure that that portion is clear, be rest assured you're going to get a good marks. But if I am not clear in terms of what step you are executing or it is not complete, then obviously the deductions of the marks would happen.
Sir, and program office wanted the question paper so that they can prepare for it next class.
Oh, you want the question paper itself?
No, sir. Program office wanted the question paper for this one. We'll give them a sample question paper from the
Okay.
previous.
Sorry. Yeah, that I'll give.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Rosal, when will be the exam date, for example?
I'm sorry?
When will be the exam date? 25th or somebody told in the chart, right? Hello?
Yeah, it'll be next Saturday. Venkat.
Okay.
25th. No, it'll be next Saturday. Which is, I think, 18th or 17th.
Okay.
I have given 3 practice situations or scenarios on the WhatsApp. So just take a look at it.
So how do we have to submit these labs, sir? For example,
So you will do it on the, let's say you have collected the screenshots, you have typed your content on the Word, Microsoft Word or Notepad or PowerPoint, and you can save it as a PDF and then upload it to the LMS.
Okay. So it's not like we will do everything in the VMs and we will give those details to you so that you will check whether everything is working fine there in the machine. It's not like that.
No, so you will have to, that's what you will put into a report basis on the activity you have done. So you will have to put the screenshots and the explanation of those screenshots.
Okay. And then last session videos are not uploaded in LMS, Rujul.
Rujul,
Yeah,
can
I'll
you
just check on
upload?
that, Frank.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. It's there. It's already for CS08. Because cloud architecture, it just needs to get mapped.
Okay, sure.
Sir, so the lab scenarios is purely on the Active Directory, no, or nothing on Linux?
This I have given only for today's session.
Okay.
This is not a exam questions. Okay.
Okay, sir.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. It's 2:30 here, so I'll probably take a sleep now. But thank you so much for joining, and all the very best for your exam.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.